How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for December 23rd through December 20th, or December 23rd through December 30th of 2019. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. At least we're all celebrating something together. Isn't that nice? That's my favorite. That's why Christmas is my favorite holiday. But anyway, this week we actually jump into eclipse season, and we get to actually start to kick off what the first part of 2020 is really going to feel like, because this week we do start, we don't really start this week with too much of anything, but we do have the solar eclipse in Capricorn happening this week, and I think that this eclipse really is going to kind of tee us off for 2020 and how we're going to start to kind of begin the year. And this year, it does start off with a very quiet, very sober energy with all of that Capricorn stuff, and this eclipse kind of brings it on. It's the Christmas eclipse. I think this is going to be, kind of sad, but also exciting in the same sense that we're finally closing out these Cancer and Capricorn eclipses. We're finally starting to get towards the end. But anyway, as we move forward through this week, we will have the Sun conjoining Jupiter and going Cazimi, and this is going to be kind of refreshing Jupiter's cycle while it's in Capricorn, and it kind of kicks off Jupiter's transit through Capricorn. And I think this is going to be a nice transit to kind of realize Jupiter and Capricorn's potential. I think this is going to be good to kind of see things through a happy-go-lucky lens, and we'll talk more about that, of course. And then, of course, actually, the next day, we have Mercury moving into Capricorn, which, now Mercury's at a detriment. It went really fast through Sagittarius, and we get to get a little bit more serious with our tone of voice. But the thing that I've been trying to get to is the Sun conjoins the South Node this week. And there's a big sense of letting go. There's a big sense of releasing with this. And this is hard stuff. This is Capricorn. This is systems and foundations that we've built ourselves upon. But this isn't new. This isn't anything that we haven't been expecting. This is just finally the week where we actually start closing some doors and turning around and heading to a different future. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. So as we start this week on Monday, we are just going to be having the moon enter Sagittarius and make a very nice sextile to Venus. And I think this is going to be kind of exciting before we do go into the solar eclipse season. What's the new year going to bring? What is happening next? What can we envision? What can we bring up? I think that this is going to be a good time to kind of just sit down with how you feel, sit down with what you believe. Jupiter's in Capricorn now, where it's not as easy to be optimistic, and the moon in Sagittarius is that time to reflect on what optimism actually looks like for you and what that means. With Jupiter now in Capricorn, though, this kind of gives us that opportunity to really go, how can I be creative about my optimism? How can I be creative about the way that I see things, or the structured, which are the ways that I structure my beliefs? And I think that's going to be a nice little reflection on Monday. And as the moon sextiles Venus, there's this cooperation with how we feel and with what we value. So I think this is going to be a really nice time to explore our feelings, explore what exactly it is that we believe, and see if that's connecting us to the things that we truly value. And that's really what this moon sextile Venus is going to look like. But as we move on to Tuesday on Christmas Eve, we are going to be having the moon start to make a conjunction to Mercury right before it does enter Capricorn. And now the moon's going to be applying to Mercury for most of the day. It actually won't conjoin it until later on that night, right before we get into Christmas. However, as the moon does conjoin Mercury, this is going to be kind of, can get a little bit overwhelming. Mercury, all about communication, messages, the way that we speak, the way that we understand, and how we're vocalizing our thoughts and our ideas. While it's in the sign of Sagittarius in detriment, it can get very overwhelmed. It has, I was just making this analogy to a client of mine was, Mercury in Sagittarius is just like the post office during holiday season. There's a lot of letters to send out. There's a lot to communicate. There's a lot going on, and it can be overwhelming. And as the moon applies to that conjunction to Mercury, this will get kind of more and more on your mind, more and more in your feelings. And it'll be really easy to want to avoid, want to escape. And that's not to say that that's a good or a bad thing. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. But as the moon does conjoin Mercury, I think it's going to be important to, again, go, okay, if I'm just so busy, what am I busy with? What am I actually getting done here? Am I just running around at a million miles an hour going in circles, or am I actually applying myself to something? I think Christmas Eve, it's going to be a little bit difficult too, since, everyone's kind of winding down, getting ready for Christmas. There's not a whole lot to do with your energy. I think it will be a little bit kind of rambunctious-y, but I do think with the moon applying to Mercury, this is also just going to be a good time to really communicate and express how you feel. Mercury's in detriment, so don't expect to say exactly what, the perfect words, But this is going to be a good time to really express how you feel in a sense that is optimistic, in a sense that can change, in a sense that is at least open to dialogue. But we get into Wednesday, and we have the Christmas eclipse, and this is exciting in my opinion, because eclipse season's so weird. Eclipse season's 2 weeks for out of every 6 months, and in my opinion, it's like the weirdest time of the year because a bunch changes, a bunch is going on. And with this eclipse, it's really close to Jupiter. It is on the south node. There's this huge sense of like the moon is literally blocking the sun. Sure, we won't be able to see it here in America, but maybe if you're watching this somewhere else, you might be able to see it. When the moon blocks the sun, that's kind of like, how we feel might be kind of blocking exactly what we're trying to do or what we're expressing. And as the moon blocks the sun, this is kind of like hey, this is calling our attention. This is bringing us to focus. And with this being next to the south node, this has a lot to do with releasing. This does have a lot to do with changing. But it's pretty close to Jupiter. It's like 2 degrees away from Jupiter. And I do think that this eclipse is going to be giving us the right tools that we need to see where the opportunities lie. Just like I talked about earlier with Jupiter and Capricorn kind of being about like recycling what we lost in the fire of Saturn and Pluto in the south node, this is kind of like where we start going through the ash and the dust and actually kind of finding something. It may not be the thing that puts the house back together, but it's a start. And so I think that this eclipse is really going to kind of set the tone with what Jupiter and Capricorn is going to look like for the rest of the year, what most of January is going to look like, and if not, what the rest of the year is going to look like. So just kind of be open with what Christmas is going to look like. Be open with what can happen. Be open with how things are going to go, and you won't be so in shock. But as we get into Thursday, this is where it gets interesting because I'm pretty sure this is the first lunar transit of the moon in Capricorn coming up to a conjunction with Jupiter. So as the moon passes the sun, we have the eclipse. It then comes up to conjoin Jupiter and Saturn, which is kind of weird to say that it's going to conjoin Jupiter and then Saturn in Capricorn. And I think that while the moon's doing that on Thursday, this is just a really big time to kind of get serious. Like, all right, Christmas is over. We got 5 days until the new year. What are we starting? What are we beginning? What are we planning? What are we really trying to accomplish here? Because as much as Jupiter and Capricorn is going to be difficult and Saturn Pluto is going to be difficult, all of this energy is just as good for things collapsing, but things actually starting and things actually beginning. Cardinal signs are signs that initiate. Aries initiates spring, Cancer initiates summer, Libra initiates fall, Capricorn initiates winter. They're all signs that start things. So as we get into Capricorn season with Jupiter here and all this stuff, there's a lot of energy to begin just as much as there's energy for things to fall apart. And I say that because while things are going down in one area, build yourself up in another area. And I think that's going to be very crucial as we go through the next few weeks. But then as we get into Friday, we're going to have the moon enter Aquarius where things start to lighten up a little bit more. We have some breathing room. We got all serious the past couple days about what are we doing, what are we planning, what are we beginning, what systems and structures and foundations we're setting. And as the moon goes into Aquarius, this can give us a little bit more of a creative energy and a different perspective with how to really go about this situation. But also on Friday, the sun will conjoin Jupiter and Jupiter will go Cazimi. And again, this is kind of like Jupiter being purified by fire. This is that fresh beginning. This is Jupiter being put on a pedestal for a second. And this calls for us to look at Jupiter in Capricorn and really examine it and what that means and what that's going to look like. And I think that as the sun does conjoin Jupiter, look at where Capricorn lies in your chart. What house does it rule? And where are you going to start to initiate and begin growing things in that area as best as you can, even if you may not have all of the resources available at the moment. And I want you to listen to me hear that again. Like, what are you planning? What are you going to begin that's optimistic that you may not have the resources for? Like, where is that part of your chart for you? And where are you going to start looking at things differently? Where are you going to start putting in a different plan of action? Where are you going to start putting in some more realistic beliefs is a very big, powerful word for Jupiter and Capricorn, having realistic beliefs. So I think as the sun conjoins Jupiter, really take a big, deep breath and kind of go like, what am I starting? What do I really trust? What do I really believe? And is that helping me? Is that going to help me grow? Is this belief system and this belief structure going to assist me in expanding this area of my chart? And that's going to be some questions to ask yourself, and you might get some good feedback from that. But as we go into Saturday and we go into this weekend, that's when we have Mercury enter Capricorn. And this becomes so much easier because even though technically Venus is in Aquarius, but not having Mercury, the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, South Node, all in Capricorn, having Mercury there is finally like someone can come up and organize this mess. Finally, someone can, consolidate things, organize things, make some commands here and there. Mercury entering Capricorn is having the functionality of the system operate smoothly through the lens of, through a logistical sense. Like, Mercury's coming in to kind of go, all right, we can put our mind to this now. We can focus on our systems, our structures, our foundation, what works, what doesn't work, what walls are in our way, and what walls aren't in our way. As Mercury enters Capricorn, I think just dealing with this whole Capricorn mess is going to become a lot more easier to understand, and because this can all be very complicated sometimes. But also, as we get into this weekend, the moon will start to make that conjunction to Venus. And I think this is going to be important in the sense that, while Venus is in Aquarius, we're really looking at attaching ourselves or detaching ourselves away from the things that we value, or detaching ourselves from the things that we thought we valued and seeing something else that we find. As the moon conjoins Venus, this is kind of like giving that emotional look at, like, how do I feel about these things? Am I actually connecting myself to the right point? Am I valuing this system in this way of organizing? And as Mercury goes into Capricorn, I think this is going to help us kind of give our like a perspective of our lives that a CEO would have. Like, how do we run? How do we operate? Where are our expenses going? And where are we making the most profit? And so I think being able to simplify things in that nature it's going to make things a lot easier. But as that happens and the moon conjoins Venus, it doesn't have to be so corporate and so cookie cutter and boring. Like, you can have a system that works for you, that is creative and unique to you, and that values your interests. It's just about setting it up that way. It's just about doing what you can to create that as well as you can. And then we get into Sunday, where I think this one's going to be interesting because we are on the sun's day, so the sun rules this day, and the sun's going to conjoin the south node. And I think this is the real, the eclipse was very much like the beginning of it. Sun conjoining Jupiter felt kind of inspiring, but the sun conjoining the south node really just seems like, to me, since what we've been through, is kind of like, what needs to change? Mercury finally comes into Capricorn, we get the answers, we get the black and white print, and we get to the sun conjoining the south node. It's like, what needs to change? What do we need to let go of? What do we need to move on from? And the south node, I say this all the time, it's very helpful when it comes to focusing on our north node. Like, we need that south node part. It's not just about our past and what we don't want. Like, that south node part of us is, integral to who we are. And I think it's about looking at what systems have we used before and what results did we get from that. And I think this is just about really rationally looking at your situation and going, this system, this way of operation doesn't work anymore. And it's time for me to not only do something different, but be different. Like, you can't just change your habits and be a different person. Like, you've got to change your mindset around where you're implementing systems. And I think that sun conjoined south node is kind of like that marker of, this is the time to change the mindset. This is the time to kind of take it all in and start moving in that other direction. But that's Sunday for you guys, and as we jump into Monday, the moon enters Pisces, where things get a little bit touchy-feely, and we get to kind of expand how we feel a little bit. But also on Monday, Mercury trines Uranus. And like I said, Mercury going into Capricorn is going to make things a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, being able to understand things in black and white. And as Mercury's kind of looking through the paperwork, it makes that trine to Uranus and kind of goes, hey, we can do something with this. And I think Mercury trining Uranus, I have no idea if any other astrologer is going to talk about it. In my opinion, that's an exciting transit to see, because that's going to give us some creative influence with our mindset and with how we logistically or mercurially organize and go through everything that's going on in this Capricorn part of your chart for you. And so as Uranus is in Taurus, break through, liberate, do something different, be innovative, feel it. And Mercury's in Capricorn, wanting just to connect all the dots in a very easy to understand system. So find a way to get it all connected. Figure out what that looks like for you. But then we go into next week, guys, and we're finally going into 2020. Next year is probably going to be one of the most history-defining years that we've seen in a very long time, so I will make that prediction. But we go into 2020 next week, which will be next year, which is kind of weird to say. Mercury conjoins Jupiter next week as well. So this is, Mercury spreading that message of Jupiter. What does Jupiter and Capricorn have to bring? Next week, we have Mars finally entering Sagittarius and getting the fuck out of Scorpio, thank God. And next week, Saturn-Pluto conjunction begins. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't think the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is anything we're not expecting, we didn't already see before, or that we didn't understand. But I think, I've been making this analogy a lot, but I want to keep hitting on it, is Saturn, South Node, Pluto that we experienced last year is like the corporate building being lit on fire. Saturn conjoining Pluto is that fire finally coming down, and we get to ground zero. Now what? And that's what all starts next week. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.